Rob Reynolds, Al Jazeera, Los Angeles.
And we are back to live pictures from Tahrir, or Liberation Square in central Cairo. As you can see, there are still large groups of anti-government protesters behind those makeshift barricades that they set up yesterday. In front, closer to the bottom of the screen, as it were, those are pro-government supporters, pro-Mubarak demonstrators. We've been hearing a bit earlier, just an hour or so ago, they were throwing Molotov cocktails or homemade petrol bombs over the barricades. There weren't that many at that point, but of course we saw they seemed well supplied with these petrol bombs yesterday when we saw these running battles, mob rule on the streets of Cairo, and the capital was ablaze. Then overnight, gunfire ringing out. Throughout all this, photojournalist Yasson Athanasiadis has been in Liberation Square, and he's on the line now. It's been an extraordinary night, and you've been updating us from time to time. We'll go over it in a minute, but I want to ask about what's happening right now.
Hello, sorry, can you repeat that, please?
What's happening right now?
Well, the action has moved a little bit further down from Liberation Square, which is pretty much a kilometer down, all the way at the 6th of October bridge, which we had heard at about 4 o'clock this morning had been taken by the protesters, but now they seem to have been pushed back about 150 meters across this rock-strewn wasteland filled with charged vehicles and impromptu steel casings acting as shields. There's also a couple of wrecked pulling vehicles here, and supporters of President Mubarak are all over the footbridge using slingshots, stones, Molotov cocktails, and smoke bombs to target the protesters. And of course, they're replying in the same way. Now, this extraordinary sight, there's an old man with a walking stick who is walking across the no man's land between the two. He's just reached a middle point, and the protesters from the anti-Mubarak side has come out and lifting their hands up to stop the hail of stones, and they're taking him to safety. A little bit further down, I can see pro-Mubarak demonstrators having pushed into the side of the Egyptian Museum along the outer perimeter and trying to force their way on the side of the demonstrators. And I'm giving you this entire description from a sort of beautiful but ruined neoclassical house that is right on the front line. Empty, high ceilings, and filled with demonstrators chucking stones from its roof.
We had heard that some anti-government demonstrators had taken over rooftops, and that the battle lines may shift to a kind of rooftop situation. It sounds like that. You can confirm that?
Sorry, you're saying that they've taken over what?
We have heard that the battle might shift to rooftops. Can you confirm it?
Well, the battle is basically creating a new opening towards Tahrir Square, but the plan is very much to remain inside Tahrir Square and stand their ground. The idea that these protesters are staying here, they're going to occupy a very important and symbolic landmark in Egyptian history and in the Egyptian capital, and they will remain put until President Mubarak goes. So they're not moving anywhere, but they certainly seem to be pushing back the pro-Mubarak demonstrators to almost the banks of the Nile.
Can you explain what difference it makes in terms of both sides' tactic? That this square that we're showing live now on Al Jazeera, this access point, the 6th of October bridge, has been taken by the anti-government protesters.
Well, really, it says that one of the most important squares in Egyptian history has been occupied by people who are against the president, and it's almost an insult. You can imagine Mr. Mubarak sitting there watching on TV a square that was absolutely under the control of the security forces up until a few days ago, now being occupied by what he is calling alien forces. forces backed by the West. And this is a new atmosphere, a very dangerous new atmosphere that we've been experiencing here in Cairo over the last 2 days as foreign journalists get specifically targeted. I was attacked by a mob and dragged on the ground as they tried to steal my camera last night just outside Tahrir Square. The president and his media saying that Western forces are behind this. Sorry, not the president, but certainly the state-run media saying that the West is behind this, and these people who are in Tahrir Square are Egyptians on the one hand, but motivated by Western interests on the other.
I just want to let you know, Yasson, that as you are speaking, we're seeing a group of maybe 30 people following some people at the front who seem to be dragging a person along, seem to be pulling someone along. It's unclear exactly who is siding with who, what this means exactly, but it is an example of this kind of mob rule. What was that like? It must have been really quite frightening last night that these groups were
what you're
unleashed.
watching on your screens is very likely another alleged collaborator having been forced by the demonstrators. There was quite a scared atmosphere last night in the square as pro-government forces hemmed it in on every side, threatening to break through and enter the square, take it over and reclaim it for their president. And it was really a kind of a collaborator every minute being dragged through the square, kicked, punched, but also protected by the demonstrators. Sorry, I just nearly got hit by a stone now in the house. But also getting protected by demonstrators who would embrace them and stop the others from hitting them. They then got stacked in the barred entrance to the Tahrir metro, where they were alternatively protected and abused by the demonstrators, calling them traitors, people who've received money in order to attack their fellow Egyptians, and such like.
Yes, well, I'm going to ask you to stand by a moment because I just want to let our viewers know about a more detailed update on a report that we gave a few minutes ago. The Egyptian health minister has now confirmed on state television that 5 people were killed in the violence last night and more than 800 injured. I'm going to quote what he's been saying as it stands on Reuters, and that is that most of the casualties were the result of stone throwing and attacks with metal rods and sticks. At dawn today, there were gunshots. The real casualties taken to hospital were 836, of which 86 are still in hospital, and there are 5 dead. Yasson Athaniadi is on the line. He was in the square all night. It seems as if the Health Minister Ahmed Sami Farid did not attribute any of the casualties to the gunfire. Does that sound right to you?
Sorry, the Health Minister said there were no casualties.
No. He said there were 836 casualties, of which 86 are still in hospital, and they were mostly...
I certainly don't know on the pro-government side how many casualties or deaths you may have had.
Yes,
as far as we know...
The point that I was making is that he said most were the result of stone throwing and attacks with metal rods and sticks, but not gunfire.
Yes, that sounds correct. In this the hospital that we entered yesterday and spent some time in a mosque just off Tahrir Square, most of the people being treated, and the doctors are about 10 p.m. told us that they treated so far about 1,500 people, were from rock wounds and being hit by sticks, metal globes and such like. There were not that many gunshot wounds until about 3 o'clock this morning when gunfire erupted from outside Tahrir Square, targeting people inside, and then ambulances swarmed the square. I counted about 7, 8, arriving by 3:30, quarter to 4 in the morning, and we then heard from eyewitnesses that 6 people had been killed.
Thank you very much indeed. Yasin Athaniadis, a photojournalist who's been in the square all night, describing really in graphic detail everything that he's seen. We have another correspondent in Cairo watching as these events unfold. This live picture that we're seeing is showing a group of demonstrators, it would seem, taking another demonstrator to the army. Oh, a crack there. That sounded like a bang. I'm not sure what that is. Can you describe what you think is going on there?
Well, yes, it was a very loud bang. We've seen pockets of smoke rising in certain areas. We've seen a lot of homemade bombers, Molotov cocktails. They've been thrown towards the anti-government demonstrators. All the anti-government demonstrators, many of them who've been sitting down for the last hour or so, are standing up now. They're walking towards their metal barricades that they put up overnight, banging on them. It's a very threatening sound. I'm sure it makes those who are banging it feel possibly more empowered than they are. Just remember, many of those demonstrators went in to the square and they were unarmed, and they were met with tens of thousands of pro-government demonstrators who were armed. They'd managed to get some of their sticks and stones from them that were thrown at each other, and that's what they're using now, those sticks, to bang on the metal barricade. Not sure what provoked that, but I just think any little thing now is stepping off the one side against the other. There are two areas of security that the anti-government demonstrators have put up, and way back behind them in the center of the square are those who are not involved in the fighting. Many women and children are still camped in the middle of that square. We've seen quite a lot of the army actions. Tanks have been moving closer towards the square, and they've got one area close to the Nile side of the October the 6th bridge. Also, a little earlier on, I was seeing soldiers who had put helmets on and bulletproof vests. They certainly seem to be preparing for some sort of action. There's reports that busloads of pro- and anti-government demonstrators are entering the square has probably provoked that. It certainly seems, Veronica, that we're going to see another day of rage unfolding on the streets of Cairo. We were expecting this to happen on Friday, but that's been brought forward by the action that we saw yesterday.
I just want to ask you to briefly recap what is being done to bring control to the situation. Is it fair to describe it as mob rule?
Well, it certainly looks like mob rule, doesn't it? It seems that the politicians are stepping back at the moment and waiting for this to play out. At the moment, the anti-government demonstrators have won. If you are just fighting for control of land, they have won. I'm not sure if we can take it to the political region where Mubarak is in all of this. I think that this violence has certainly backfired against him. It certainly toughened the U.S. stance against him. He elicited a lot of sympathy when he addressed the nation on Tuesday, when he said, look, he won't step down now, but he will step down at the next elections. He will enforce some of the changes that they asked for, some of the constitutional changes. That, I believe, has been undermined by what is seen as regime-controlled attacks on these anti-government demonstrators. I think the extent of the motivation now of the anti-government demonstrators will be seen on the streets today and certainly tomorrow.
Please do stay on the line. Our correspondent giving us the situation on the streets in Cairo around Tahrir Square. This is live picture you're seeing. I want to take this opportunity before we hit the top of the hour to give you a recap of events. Gunfire and petrol bombs have filled Cairo's Liberation Square in the last few hours. In the last few minutes, Egypt's health minister, speaking on state television, has said that 5 people have died and 836 have been wounded. Al Jazeera correspondents say pro-democracy protesters have now retaken control of the square. And we have seen pictures of soldiers detaining people. In fact, that's what you're seeing now. The army had been accused of failing to intervene even as clashes turned violent. The US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has spoken to Egypt's newly appointed Vice President Omar Suleiman, condemning the clashes as a shocking